Hi, so nice to meet you all. I'm so happy that I can stand today in front of you and eventually present my work that I did with a team. So, my name is Luiza. I'm the head of production at Bitnoise, and today I'm gonna maybe advise you around some tips and tricks how to organize your development process to keep it nice and lean based on my real work example, straight from the collaboration with the client. But before we're gonna start, I would like to introduce myself a bit more. So when I was a young woman, I always dreamed about becoming a professional volleyball player. Much different area. I enjoy playing sport. I wanted to do that for a living, but unfortunately, the life had very different plans for me. So when I was on studies, I started working as first mechanical engineer, and then as a project manager in pharma industry, which is a GSK. I think you may be aware what that company is about. And we were working in very traditional methodologies, mostly related to waterfall management, when planning was a very important part of the process. And eventually we saw the final effect of the product in the very end of the process. I've heard that there is existing a very different world. That's why I switched to IT industry, and I started my journey as a project manager and Scrum Master. I got very into frequent delivery, flexibility, and I really enjoyed that I saw the final effect right after first iterations. Now I'm the head of production from this year, and privately I'm a very multi-faced woman. I am owning a blind dog, and eventually I'm also snowboarder, food lover, and volleyball player. So what is important in my role? So many people think or imagining project manager as someone who is leading the team. This is the truth, partially, but the most important fact is that we're trying to maximize the business value from projects. And that's why during collaboration with my clients, they expect from me 3 types of activities. Optimization of the development process, which eventually leads to speeding up the delivery and generates savings. But how to do that? How to boost the efficiency of your development process? How to organize that to keep it nice and lean? Today we're gonna look for the answer in one of my real work cases with my client. The example of process efficiency that you're going to see here will be based on the work from mobile team. And where to start? So to start reorganizing your development process, first you need to find out how your ongoing process works. One of the metrics that you can use for that, and we were using it, and I've implemented them, was the velocity chart. The velocity chart consists of amount of work that you have been committing in the beginning of your cycle. Here we have sprints. This is this gray bar. And consists also of completing work in the same sprint. Our measure of the work, of amount of work, as you can see, are story points, but that's okay. You can use hours or other metrics that you would like to use. And what you can read from this chart. This chart, and actually those measures were taken in the middle of the last year, and there's a before effect of all optimization and reorganization that we have taken. So our CAC level was eventually around 52%. It meant that we were delivering only half of functionalities that we were planning in the very beginning. That's not so much, but after 6 months of improvements, we eventually boosted this measurement, and we arise from 52 to 82%. We're starting to delivering faster, delivering more, and eventually gathering feedback from our clients. To give you a bit more visibility on sprint before and after, I'm going to present you our Bernard chart. So first example is a Bernard chart from the sprint 7, and it's very similar to velocity chart because it also represents the amount of work that we have completed in 2 weeks' time in one sprint, in this example. And in theory, we would like to have this red line very close to this gray line. It's not so close, right here. And this middle period, which you can see here, tells us a bit more about what happened actually in this sprint. So Bernard charts also shows you the history. And in this case, you can see that we are not getting closer, we are getting much farther, so we weren't delivery at all. We were also, those guys are also showing you that we were adding tasks during the realization of our sprint, probably because we were forgetting about some sort of requirements on the planning level, which also isn't good. And eventually, those straight lines also shows us that we were waiting, a lot of waiting. After effect, after improvements effect, example of the sprint number 19, eventually shows you that we finally starting to get closer to the perfect plan. Of course, we still have those straight lines, which means that probably you're waiting, but we started finally delivering. So how? This particular example refers to the mobile front-end team that I've been collaborating with as a Scrum Master. And together with my product owner, 3 developers and QA specialists, we tried to reorganize this development process. A bit more background about the company. International company which existed on the market plus 15 years. We were delivering both for iOS and Android platforms. And eventually we're trying out the Scrum approach. So, how have we achieved this? Things that we fixed. First, we implemented frequent delivery and client feedback. We set improvements of backlog management, and eventually set better transparency and useful board flow. No worries if it doesn't tell you anything. I will be more precise in next slides. So first, we understood that frequent delivery has to come up with the increment, with the value feature, which our client can test eventually. That's why our 2-week cycle should always end up with such increment and eventually be presented on the review meeting. So our developers, plus product owner, plus Scrum Master, were sharing their recordings, their output from this 2-week sprint to the stakeholders who consisted of internal clients, which is business analyst and designer, and also external clients. That was first feedback loop that we did. We understood also that retrospective is a good place to gather the feedback, but from technical team. They can tell you eventually what went good, what didn't went good in our last iteration, and bring you a valuable information about the next steps, what we should improve. All those conclusions from those 2 meetings, from review and retrospective, are the good input for start planning the next iteration. So the planning is not only about creating the plan for the next implementation, but also to discuss all those 2 meetings and eventually adjust what we wanted to do. Why those 2-week cycles, leaving a feedback on review, retrospective, and planning meetings, and also boosting effectiveness of them is so important? We noticed that we eventually minimize the risk of delivery that isn't expected. We set continuous improvements of our processes and bolster the collaboration. We really got closer because of those meetings, we really got closer because of this frequent delivery. Second, do you remember those straight lines on this Bernard chart? Eventually we understood one fact, very important one, that the problems comes with bad prepared requirements. We were struggling a lot during realization of our sprints because eventually we have asked many questions around how the functionality should look like. Where's the endpoint for this future? That was our questions. So we understood that we needed to set some rules, some improvements that can help our backlog management. And what we did? First, we confirmed double, triple time that single person should stay responsible for keeping backlog up to date. The product owner is the person who has the answer how the functionality should look like, and this is his final call. We also use Jira to keep our backlog up to date as a one source of truth for everyone, for stakeholders who can review it on their review meeting, and for the tech team who can discuss this backlog also on retrospective or eventually the planning. The backlog should be should have a form of a list with clear prioritization rules, with clear issues type and potential workloads. Our examples were story points. We also understood that single person, as a person of product owner, doesn't have to have all knowledge around requirements, around requirements, yes, but how to implement them. That's why he can use some sort of help from developers who supports with technical analysis, the product owner. He can also discuss design with his designer and deeper clients' expectations with business analyst. The refinement process of backlog, which is eventually a preparation of those requirements, should happen in parallel to ongoing sprint, to ongoing development process. Our solution was that we are actually meeting two times per week on the refinement process, and thanks to that, we kept our backlog really up to date. Last but not least is that your requirements, so your tasks or however you are calling them in your backlog, should be in final version just before the start of the sprint. You don't have to make a concrete plan of few months ahead. The most important is that you have a final call, a final decision how the functionality should look like in the beginning of the sprint, on the planning level. During the sprint, nothing changes. What were the effects on our side from those improvements? We saw the results as a faster delivery at development stage. We also noticed that we reduced time for unnecessary discussions because everything was happening on the refinement or on the planning. And also, we had a clear transparency what's going to be delivered first and next, thanks to the well prioritization and workloads of our backlog. Last but not least is about transparency and useful board flow. The board flow should be a visual representation of your development process. I do not insist how columns should look like, how the board flow should eventually also be set, unless it suits your team and speed up the delivery. So first thing that we did is that we confirmed one more time about our board flow. We confirmed with the developers what it meant to them to keep, for example, their task in to-do, and in progress or in code review, and eventually how to go in positive way through the board or also in negative way. VIP limits, which means work in progress limits, supports reacting quickly on your bottlenecks. That's why we understood that they might be needed and effectively very helpful to boost the delivery, to speed up the delivery. For example, as you can see here on the presentation, the number 2 of blocked items means that if this number will be exceeded, eventually the column will become red. Visualization is a very good solution to encourage your team to seek for help. What mean these red columns? It means that everyone should drop the work for a bit and eventually focus on unblocking tickets. Why? Because without them, we won't complete the goal. We won't complete the sprint. We won't complete the delivery. So it's actually everyone needs to be engaged to bolster this process. The third thing, very useful in the board flow, is a clear and obvious goal. A goal that is set and is a direction for our team, is a direction for developers what to do first to eventually make sure that in the end of the sprint, we will have a real valuable increment. The last thing that very supports transparency on our side are daily meetings. We are trying to not force, but eventually to share the board on those daily meetings between developers and discuss the bottlenecks and discuss what doesn't work in our process. Thanks to that, you have a daily basis update that you can react very quickly on your potential bottlenecks and speed up the delivery. Okay, what to remember? I know it might be a lot, but there are a few things that you can remember from it and probably will bolster your delivery. And I'm really encouraging you to try to implement them. First, work in smart iterations. Deliver frequent, a valuable increment. Make sure that you involve clients into the feedback process. Keep your backlog valuable, keep your backlog up to date. Encourage people to add necessary details that they can help you eventually to deliver faster. And create a useful board flow that suits your team. Thank you.